Hello everyone and welcome to class today. My name is Kelly Battles and you can see my contact information right there. A reminder that class starts promptly at 10:30 a.m. and as always you should run your audio setup wizard as soon as you log on. That's the microphone icon near the top of the screen on the left. Also a reminder to lower your electronic hand when you log on to class. It's automatically raised. So some reminders as we get started. Remember to turn off your phone, shut your door and put up a do not disturb sign, and prepare to focus as we start to focus on our material today. Let's do a quality check first. First of all, can you give me a green check if there's a record sign in the upper right? Great. Are the PowerPoint slides visible with the word quality check at the top? And lastly, can you hear me adequately? Great. So I want for you to picture to yourself sitting alone in an empty classroom. Nothing but a textbook in front of you, no way to talk directly to the teacher, no way to talk to any other students. And think about how difficult it would be to learn in that kind of situation, how isolating. That's the dilemma of online learning. That is the cardinal sin, you might say. The community of inquiry theory that we're going to be talking about today tries to address this issue, and it consists of three presences: cognitive, social, and teaching, that help to form a sense of community and get rid of that sense of isolation. And we'll be going through each of the three presences today. Our big question is, how can we use the three presences to encourage a sense of student community and engagement? Our learning objectives. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to describe the three presences of the community of inquiry framework, identify examples of the three presences, and apply the community of inquiry to the online English literature and composition classroom. So to begin with, like I said, online courses can often feel very isolating. You feel like you're working alone, oftentimes with little or no communication with the professor even. One way to combat this is social presence, and that involves a feeling of realness between you and your classmates, perceiving one's classmates as real, fully realized people, not just robots behind the computer screen. And although some people may think that you need verbal cues and visual cues, body language to have that connection, actually research has shown that the written word has some advantages. Of course, writing is the main way that we communicate in the online environment. But writing creates sometimes deeper, more critical thinking. For shy students, it increases participation, and it enhances self-disclosure, maybe because you don't have to look at someone face-to-face when you're communicating. It makes it more comfortable. However, social presence should not be just socializing. The interaction should primarily be focused on learning rather than simply socializing for its own sake. So return to our COI Venn diagram. You can see that social presence influences the other two presences in significant ways. Here you can see that social presence supports discourse in terms of helping us to interact with the intellectual content. And over here you can see that social presence helps to set a positive climate. So what I'd like you to do is I'm going to change the polling to ABCD, and I'd like you to select which of the following would be the least effective way to enhance social presence. Okay, so let me publish that poll to the whiteboard. Okay, so you can see that you guys picked B. That's actually not the one I was thinking of, but it works too. I can see that I was ambiguous there. So I'm thinking of a discussion board where people are replying to each other rather than just posting something. But I can see where you guys are coming from there. Yeah, if you're posting in isolation, that definitely doesn't work. Okay, so let me clear this out, clear page. Okay. All right, so the next presence is cognitive presence, which consists of primarily critical thinking, but that has to happen within a community because that encourages reflection and it helps us to correct each other's cognitive biases. And an important part of that is shared metacognition, which is thinking about our process of thinking. In a critical inquiry community, we can open each other's eyes to our own learning. What I'd like you to do is go to the talk, and let's do this in alphabetical order, starting with Joan. And I'd like you to tell us about a time when you had a classmate open your eyes about something that you hadn't recognized or realized before.
Oh, interestingly, years ago, I was an English major, and one of the things I liked best about being an English major were literature classes where you've all read something and discussed it. And I'm still, to this day, fascinated by the fact that each individual could read a book or a paragraph, whatever, and come away with a perspective and a take on it, and then another individual would be allowed to speak and completely change your mind, or if not change your mind, at least say, make you say, wow, I never thought of that. And that's why I loved being an English major back in the day.
That's why I like teaching English, yeah.
I'll bet, yes, it's great.
Hi, it's Marianne. So mine's a little different. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. In wine tasting, oftentimes we try to conjure up a specific flavor or aroma, and it's maddening sometimes because you just can't place your finger on an aroma. And for years, when I smell Pinot Noir, certain Pinot Noirs from Oregon, there's one smell that I cannot name. It's common, and I cannot name it. And someone turned to me very simply and said, "What are you talking about? That's rhubarb." And I thought, well, I don't know when the last time I smelled rhubarb, but he was actually right. The smell that I was after was rhubarb, and it was so easy for him, and now I never forget it. It's something that I smell immediately now.
I love that. I've had people tell me that wine can smell like stable, I think so, which they said is a euphemism for like a poopy smell.
Yeah, it's barnyard. They'll say barnyard or manure. Yeah.
Yeah, barnyard. Yeah, I think that's hilarious.
Yeah, you
but
don't need any help with that one.
Okay, great. So those are some really good examples of shared metacognition. So cognitive presence also has a 4-step process that's actually based on the scientific method. There's the trigger phase where our eyes are opened up to a problem or an issue. Exploration is where we investigate the information related to that initial problem. And then we have integration, where we figure out a way to explore or synthesize or solve that initial problem. And resolution is where we assess we assess our potential solution or synthesis. So going back to our helpful Venn diagram, the function of teaching presence is to facilitate cognitive and social presence. You can see here we do this by selecting the content, and then over here by setting that positive climate for our interactions. The elements of teaching presence involve design and organization, which for online courses definitely is front-loaded. You have to do a lot of careful design at the beginning. Facilitating discourse, as we've already talked about. You need to guide discussion, link students together in what they're saying, steer them towards consensus, and very importantly, set that positive climate. And then lastly, the one that we probably think of the most is direct instruction, because our image of the teacher sometimes is as lecturer, but this is really about delivering content, but also confirming that the students do understand what you're saying and helping to correct any of their misconceptions. What I'd like you to do is go over to the left to the pin function. It is the third from the top, and I'd like to give you some statements, and you circle the presence that it represents. So the first one is providing content, course design, and facilitation. If you could circle which one of the presences that is. Great. The next one is personal disclosure, group cohesion, and interactivity. And obviously the last one, enhancing critical thinking through the 4 steps of practical inquiry. Great. I did a lot better on that one than the multiple choice. Had some more clarity with what I was trying to do. Okay, so finally, well not finally, we still have a couple more steps. How do we go about incorporating the 3 presences in the English literature and composition class? So peer review is the biggest way that we would incorporate it. It's very common in face-to-face and online. So this would be peer review of things like essays. What I'd like you to do is to go to the text chat. I know we've all had some experience with some peer review, and just give me 1 or 2 word adjectives, like describing how you feel about peer review. Those are really good positive adjectives, enlightening and clarifying. Sometimes people have less positive feelings about peer review, definitely, but our goal as instructors is to get to where you guys are and making them feel comfortable with it. So lastly, social presence for peer review. So this is the easy part for peer review because it's inherently social. And the interactions are oriented towards the learning activity. So that's the simplest one to enact when it comes to the English literature. And then actually, lastly, teaching presence. And a lot of times teachers forget that they should be involved in the peer review too. They don't need to just stand there and watch it happen. Teachers should model critiques for their students, and also establish the supportive tone that you need to have when it comes to this. Okay, so cognitive presence. Cognitive presence with peer review allows for that shared metacognition because reviewers interrogate and writers justify their choices or change their minds. These interactions don't always necessarily have to be like sweet and kind. They always should be respectful, but sometimes they can be challenging. You can have some challenging comments in there too. So what I'd like you to do is to use the emoticon tool. And I'm going to read you out a couple of comments from peer reviews and tell me how you feel about it. Give me maybe a smiley face if you think it's a good comment, or a confused or disapproval face if you think that it's not a good comment. And use the emoticon that's over to the left. You know, there's the hand raising sign, the polling. It's the one that's all the way over to the left. I'm assuming that's the right one to use. Okay, first, your argument was just too confusing for me to follow. Do you think, how would that make you feel? Yeah, definitely. It's not very kind. The first paragraph needs a little more work. Perhaps adding an interesting fact about the area would grab the reader. Okay, yeah, definitely. So you can kind of see that tone is really vital when it comes to peer review. Okay, so to summarize, in the community of inquiry, we have to be aware of how these three presences all combine together to create a sense of a shared goal when it comes to the learning experience. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me, and that goes for our virtual listeners here today. And if you want to know more about the community of inquiry, refer to Garrison's e-learning in the 21st century. Thank you very much.